aguanta, resiste, que ya casi vamos llegando.
Hello, this is Ernesto Lechner, and this is the Autry Sizzling Summer Nights Backstage. I'm very happy today because we have a distinguished guest, somebody who's an organic and integral part of the music scene in Los Angeles, somebody who came from Bogota in Colombia many years ago, and definitely has contributed his own brand of music, of Latin American music, to this city. Also an old friend of the Autry, Daniel Jiménez Afanador. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello.
I remember very well, Danny, that you once performed with a full orchestra at the Autry for a private event, and it was very memorable to me especially, and it sort of has to do with the subject of today's show, because you managed this amazing thing of mixing in Afro-Caribbean idioms of many different genres with a little bit of pop and rock, and I think you and Colombian music in general are so good at doing that. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I think that growing up in Colombia is unique in the sense that you are completely surrounded by Afro-Caribbean music. So cumbia and salsa and all of their variations are ever present in the bus, at school, your parents. Actually, I think it's kind of interesting that when you grow up in Colombia, if you want to meet a girl when you come of age and you want to start dating, the only way to do it was to dance salsa, because you would go to a party. This is the earliest parties you go to with girls, and the girls are on one side and the boys are on another side, and the only way to get to talk to a girl, especially if you're shy like me, is to say, hey, would you like to dance? And if you don't know how to dance, then that's a problem. Even if you are not necessarily at that age into salsa music, you kind of have to learn how to dance. It's a survival thing. When you would ask a girl to dance, and she may or may not agree to dance with you, but even if she did, she may show you with body language whether or not she's interested in you. So this, you're a salsa guy. So if she's sort of like dancing really far away from you, you're like, oh, she's not really interested in me. She's dancing with me, but that doesn't mean anything. Or she may allow you to get closer to her, and that, of course, is an indication that you may have a chance. So, I grew up in a big city where pop and rock and music from around the world was just also ever present. When I was younger, my parents liked vallenato and cumbia and Afro-Caribbean music, and I didn't like it at first, right? I knew that I had to learn it in order to meet girls, but that was about it. And then over time, I guess this happens to all of us, right? We start to like our parents' music eventually. So that was exactly my story. I was into heavy metal, and then I suddenly realized, oh my God, heavy metal and salsa are both super cool.
I remember you telling me that you, as a teen, you loved heavy metal, bands like Iron Maiden and such. But then also I know that you like some of the quintessential Colombian salsa artists like Fruco. In fact, you collaborated with Fruco on a song. Also the inimitable Joe Arroyo, who left us way too soon. And I wanted to ask you, because this to me exemplifies, that's the music of Colombia, a young singer-songwriter who loves Iron Maiden and who loves salsa as well. What do you like about heavy metal, and what do you like about Colombian salsa? Could you tell me a little bit of the things that you like about each?
Salsa, and I mean, I'm just going to put Afro-Caribbean music in that one category because it's not just salsa. It's all that music that really comes from Africa originally. To me, has a sophistication in the rhythms. Even with the saddest song, there's joy. It's almost like there's a joyfulness to suffering if it's a sad song. So you can either be joyful because you're joyful, or you are joyful that you get to experience sadness. And I think that is something that's frequently present in that music, and that is something that really is very touching for me, and it's something that really attracts me a lot to that music. It's part of my identity. Like I said, I grew up listening to this music. With Heavy metal, I think that the question is more to do with rock and roll. I think that rock and roll is more than a type of music, it's a way of looking at the world that is defined by being rebellious, right? Rebellious against the establishment, rebellious against what society dictates that you should be doing. So I think that for any artist, that idea should be very attractive, right? Which is, let's question what's expected of us and let's push the boundaries, and through that sort of expand as artists. It's you can see that I come at those two things from two very different places, but I experience profound joy when I'm playing or listening to either of those kinds of music.
It's interesting because you just said that even in the saddest Colombian songs, there is an element of the joyful. And something that obsesses me about Colombian tropical music is the opposite, in fact, is that even in the happiest songs, even in the most dance-friendly Colombian songs, there is a hint, there is this deep nostalgia, this melancholy vibes. A music critic once wrote that he ascribed that to the fact that many of the melodies are in minor key. I think that could be it, but that's also just part of the picture. Why do you think that you guys, you in Colombia, that you have this amazing hits for dancing, this even cumbias, but there's also there always somehow, even if it is subtle, in these shades of melancholy regret. Why do you think that is?
You know, I always think about Love in the Time of Cholera. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to paraphrase because I don't remember the quote exactly. But
this is, of course, the novel by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, the famous Colombian author.
Correct. And there's a point in the book where he's describing the war that's happening, and the book is set in turn of the century Cartagena and the Caribbean coast of Colombia. He basically, some character says, this war came after the war before that, and then the war before that, and there's going to be another war after this one. It's so many wars that they're all just the same war. We've been at war from day one. There's some truth to that, and I think that, you know, the progression, the history of Colombia in particular has been so turbulent for you know, so many different factors, that there's an inherent suffering, I think, that comes with being Colombian, whether you are well off or not, whether you're in the city or in the countryside. There's a certain amount of suffering it's like I don't know, it's like when you are born a Colombian, you know, they give you your salsa shoes and your suffering card, and I think that maybe that's what you're picking up on in Colombian music, particularly when we talk about music that has its origins in Africa. Mm-hmm. Talk about the suffering of people who were enslaved and brought to the Americas. So I think that there's some of that too. Even the happiest songs may be in a minor key, and it doesn't matter. It's almost like the idea of major and minor becomes almost unimportant. We're joyful because we get to be sad. We're proud of our suffering. Let's celebrate that we get to suffer. Maybe there's something profound there.
Thank you so much for that. And going back to your catalog of songs and your songwriting process, you're right now wearing the t-shirt of Vikingo, and this is your new band that performs sort of smoldering rock and roll anthems, which I love. And then you have your solo act, which you do more like a singer-songwriter vibe with ballads and even sort of happier Latin pop songs. And you've done a tropical orchestra for the Autry, which was definitely unforgettable. And I've been listening now for over a decade to your catalog of songs that continues growing and evolving. And I love it how it's like random chunks of all these different genres. It could be a little bit of reggae. It could be something from the Nueva Trova by Silvio Rodriguez. It could be a happy Latin pop hit from Mexico. It could be a little bit of a cumbia. It could be some Black Sabbath mystique. But all these little things come into place in different songs that you compose and record. Is that completely unconscious? Is that something that just happens completely organically? Or do you ever think, well, let me, in this little bridge, let me do an homage to Bob Marley or something like that?
Sometimes I sort of punish myself, right? Because and I think we all do this. We all look back and we're like, why can't I just focus on one thing, you know? Mm-hmm. And I have a love and hate relationship with that idea, because sometimes I feel like, well, maybe it would be a lot easier if I decided that I'm going to do salsa music and I just focused on that, or if I'm just going to do rock and roll and focus on that. But instead, what comes naturally to me is to just write whatever comes naturally to me, which is sometimes sometimes I'll pick up this guitar, and that guitar tells me, like you said, it's like cue and throa. That's what it evokes, right? Or I'll sit in front of that piano back there and I'll do something maybe more pop or more like pop ballad, or I mean, and now that I consider myself an Angelino, I write in English a lot. Maybe 50% of what I've written is in English, and it is what it is. I'm just interested in everything. And maybe if I have to think back on what I just said about being joyful because we get to experience suffering, maybe there's a part of me that just wants to experience everything, right? I want to experience suffering and joy. I also want to experience salsa and metal and ballads. And if I get to do it, why not?
Right, great. So the song that you are going to perform for us today is Aguanta. Aguanta is my personal favorite of all the songs that you've written. I'm so happy that you're going to do an unplugged version of this. And also in that song, I see a little bit of the great songwriters of Latin America. I see a little bit of Joan Manuel Serrat from Spain. I see a little bit of Pablo Milanés and Silvio Rodriguez from Cuba. I see a little bit of everything of the great, sort of the foundations of what the contemporary Latin American song is like. So that's why I treasure this song so much. But I also want to ask you, because I understand the lyrics, which are incredibly optimistic and positive. And Aguanta is sort of like, hold on, right? Hang in there. And I know there's a story there about the composition of Aguanta that has to do with your father, who's, I would describe him sort of as a Colombian James Bond kind of character. So can you tell us a little bit about why did you compose Aguanta, and how is your father related to that?
Aguanta is a song that I wrote during a time that I was in Colombia. So I came to LA with a student visa. I was going to Cal State Northridge. I went back to renew my visa. The US government found out there was a criminal who shared my name. So when I showed up at the embassy, they said, well, we can't renew your visa because there's a person that the FBI is looking for who shares your name. And I said, well, clearly it's not me, because you guys know that I've been going to school and I'm here and I can show you that I'm me and I'm not that person. And the response was, well, we need to send your documentation to the government, to the headquarters, blah, blah, blah. We cannot renew your visa. Don't call us, we'll call you. So I had a girlfriend at the time who ended up breaking up with me after a certain amount of time that I was in Colombia. I was playing in a band that basically disintegrated because I wasn't here. I was also registered for school, so I couldn't continue school. So, it just sort of like threw a wrench at everything that I was doing here. Talk about suffering. My dad's first wife and his daughter passed away in a car accident where he was driving before I was born. Then he married my mom, and my mom passed away before she turned 40. And so my dad is somebody who lost 2 wives and a daughter. If you meet him, he's sort of like the soul of the party. But simultaneously, if you look into his eyes, you can see the suffering. Like you said, he's kind of like a Colombian James Bond. Like, he's tall and he's good looking, and, people like him and everybody thinks he's great, and he's great. But I think that, all of these experiences, have made it very hard for him in his life. I'm in this situation where, like, my whole life is falling apart and I'm forced to go back to live with my dad. One of the things that he always said to me was, why don't you write some music that people can enjoy? Your music is always so serious. And he was just always criticized how serious my music was. I was like, I'm gonna write a song and I'm gonna play it at your birthday and it's gonna be a happy song. Turns out the song is actually pretty serious, but it has a positive note. It's in a major key. It's basically saying to him, hang on, hang tight. We're gonna get through. Things are gonna be all right. We have each other. I wrote the song and I played it for his birthday, and it was a really meaningful moment in my life, hopefully in his too.
Well, Daniel Jiménez Afanador, we here at the Autry are exceedingly proud of your musical artistry. Really, it's almost like a limitless pride. It has no end. So thank you so much. We're privileged that today you're here with us to perform Aguanta. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay.
Tengo una cama chica, una silla vieja y poco dinero para la cuenta, pero al menos estoy aquí. Tengo preocupaciones, tengo canciones, tengo una media que está sin par. Sobre la mesa se enfrió el café. Tengo zapatos rojos y una botella de vino blanco que voy tomando cada vez que no te veo. Tengo un cuaderno nuevo y una guitarra que está sin cuerdas. Tengo un baúl, te tengo a ti. Y si parezco callado, es porque te estoy escuchando a ti. Y si parezco callado, es porque sigo nadando hacia la orilla. Hacia la orilla. Aguanta, resiste, que ya casi vamos llegando. Aguanta, resiste, que ya vamos a llegar. Aguanta, resiste, que ya casi vamos llegando. No sueltes mi mano, que ya vamos a llegar. Tengo una buena amiga y un par de fotos de todo lo que se quedó atrás. Tengo dos manos, te tengo a ti. Tengo unas gafas nuevas, muchas historias y una pulsera de mi país. Tengo 1000 sueños por cumplir. Tuve muchos amores, tengo dolores por todo el cuerpo. Tengo papeles que ya no sirven, te tengo a ti. Tengo muchas preguntas y pocos libros en el estante. Tengo razón y si no la tengo me voy de aquí. Y si parezco callado, es porque te estoy escuchando a ti. Y si parezco callado, es porque sigo nadando hacia la orilla. Hacia la orilla. Aguanta, resiste, que ya casi vamos llegando. Aguanta, resiste, que ya vamos a llegar. Aguanta, resiste, que ya casi vamos llegando. No sueltes mi mano, que ya vamos a llegar. 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 Y si parezco callado, es porque te estoy escuchando a ti. Y si parezco callado, es porque sigo nadando hacia la orilla. Hacia la orilla. Aguanta, resiste, que ya casi vamos llegando. Aguanta, resiste, que ya vamos a llegar. Aguanta, resiste, que ya casi vamos llegando. No sueltes mi mano, que ya vamos a llegar. 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 Que ya vamos a llegar.
The Autry Museum of the American West thanks our members and supporters.